we're going to look at accelerating towards net zero with properly designed and governed digitalisation. Our keynote speaker is Ilias Iakovidis. Ilias is an advisor at DG Connect, which is part of the European Commission, where his work focuses on the interplay of digital and green transitions, in particular looking at the greening of the ICT sector, digitalisation in support of green transition, and digital for circular economy. If you have a question for Ilias, please use the box on the right hand side and I'll put some of them to him towards the end of this session. Ilias, welcome. The floor is yours.
Very much thanks for inviting me. Very much would like to resonate what Tom just said. It's about being practical. So if I lose you any time during the presentation, please let's come back to it in the question, or I leave my email in a post-event follow-up. So what my message today is are you as companies, are you as organizations using the full potential of digitalization, of digital tools? Because digitalization is the tool that we actually trying to get the maximal benefit from in the Commission and with the stakeholders like Carbon Trust, and I will explain that later. I think it's still underused, but also there are traps that we want to avoid because the rebound effects and the effects that you can have using digital, the unforeseen effects may not always be positive. So yes, digitalization is a powerful tool, but it needs a proper governance and knowing how to use it. So this is kind of the biggest message already spilled over before I even start my presentation. So as a Commission, you are bombarded, I'm sure, by many legislations from my colleagues from all over the corners, from DG Klima, DG Environment, DG Just. So you get corporate social responsibility rules, consumer type of directions. You have the environmental reporting that you need to do, and DG Klima is really pushing on acceleration of the emission reductions. So I'm sure you're surrounded by all the things we do. And Green Deal is kind of the mother of all the legislations that are coming up lately. But I'm sitting in the digital agenda corner of the Commission that has for decades had nothing to do with the green. So we were in a separate planet. So for a long time, digital agenda and the green agenda were kind of a separate, non-communicative agendas. Well, that has changed with this Commission. I myself tried to actually change that. And we have now those two transitions in a way that we're trying to twin them. Now, the question is, what does it really mean? So let's look at few examples where digitalization is already proven on a smaller scale that is beneficial. Before I go to Digital Product Passport, which I will actually end, this for me is one of the most powerful tools that we're building, we have already, and there are many publications by Jesse and by Carbon Trust. We have already a lot of evidence what digitalization can do, not only for your scope 1, scope 2, your buildings, your transport, your kind of operations, but in the society at large, in the economy at large. But the biggest problem for you, I'm sure, is scope 3, and we will come back to that. And that's where I think we are not utilizing enough the digital power of your supply chains, the data management gathering, and later on changing your business models. So I'll come back to that as well. Now, the most kind of climate critical sectors where we already do a lot of pilots and even legislations is energy sector. And energy sector is kind of the first one where we see the power of digitizing electricity grids. Just digitizing electricity grids and smart, let's say, IoT solutions, you can avoid leakages. Leakages in electricity are about 2% of total electricity that you can save, which is huge. It's even more than the electricity consumption of all those digitalizations you need to put in place. But electricity is not the only distribution network that is leaking. And I'm sure Geraldine later on will tell us about the water distribution where the leakages are huge. And smart monitoring can actually give us a better insight where it's happening and how to prevent it. The second kind of a big one is transport, and a lot has been done there, and connected mobility is kind of hailed as one way to do things, and agriculture. But I will stay in agriculture to give you one example how things can go well and how things can go bad doing digitalization. So you get the picture what's happening and what kind of trap you can get into. Today, the precision farming is very popular, and I don't know if there are actually companies in the audience working on precision farming. So we have a precision farming solutions that are kind of connected meteorological stations, a lot of sensors in the soil, on the plant, drones. If it's big fields, also satellite connectivity. All that is put together to work on better prediction, better herbicides usage, pesticides usage, fertilizer usage, water management, all that is put in motion. Now the question is, how do we deploy at large scale? One way that we see member states and others doing is they push gadgets on farmers. Pushing gadgets on farmers will go only so far because they have no capacity, they have no resources, no skills, and basically it will underutilize the power of digital. So that we are afraid, and we are actually making those calculations with the Carbon Trust, is that if you just push gadgets on farming, the direct footprint of all these gadgets, drones and IoTs and connectivity and laptops and AIs on the laptops, all that has a footprint. Are we going to be sure that we're going to recover the negative part and the enablements will actually overcome that so we have a net positive effect? We don't know. We need to measure and we need to guide the farmers how to do that. Maybe a better way is to take companies that are in agricultural products, like those that are selling herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, and say, can you become a service company? Can you change your model instead of your model being a quantity-based business model where more quantity I sell, more money I make, to be a service model to kind of help farmers to keep the health of their plants, where you get a fixed amount per hectare, and then it's the company's responsibility to put all that smartness around to minimize the use of agricultural products. So you see, there are ways where digital can actually change the business model and make it healthier for the plant, for the soil, for the people, and to be profitable as well. So this is just an example where digital can be powerful. We do of very grandiose projects like Destination Earth and many others. I will come back to Digital Product Passport. The only one thing I want to say still is that many of you as companies are aware that we have kind of worked with member states on the next generation of EU, the so-called resilience and recovery plans, and 700 billion euro has been kind of given to European countries to spend on digitalizing. 20% had to be spent on digitalizing, and about 40% had to be spent on greening and the green transition. Unfortunately, what I see is that the capacity of the member states, the different ministries, is not yet on the level of understanding how to use digital for greening. So there's not much green in the digital part of this 700 billion, and there's not much digital part in the digitalization in the green part. So that is kind of indicative that there is not a good understanding, and this is kind of public office writing it, but of course they are also in touch with the stakeholders like you. So this message is basically also going to you. Digitalization is not yet used properly for green and for the net zero transition. Of course, and this is, I will not say long, we know that there is a footprint. We know that green is not, digitalization is not green. So we're working as DigiConnect, as Commission, on data centers to be greener, on telecoms to be greener, on minimizing the waste, on making sure that the next generation of processors that we actually building are more energy efficient, green software. All the greening of ICT is happening, but it's not the subject of today. So when we say green digital transition, the twin transition is a priority. What does it really mean? What you see in the media, and what many of you maybe as sustainability officers are aware of, is that, oh, there is a lot of conflict. I mean, all these electricity consumption of electricity, of the digital, the footprint that is close to 3, maybe 4% in Europe, and the waste that is the fastest growing waste category is a problem, and that dominates in media. What I want to actually push as a message to you now, that there is a huge and much bigger potential for synergy of the transition for your organization, but also for your business and for the society at large. And if you compare the 3% footprint of digital with a 15 to 20% of enablement, you see there is a huge potential, but it's a potential. It has not been realized yet. Why has not been realized? Okay, maybe there are not enough infrastructures yet in place, but because people don't know how to use it properly. And that is what we basically working on in the coalition that I will mention, and with Carbon Trust. How do we know what proper use of digitalization is? How do we measure the net effect? How do I measure the enablement? How do I subtract the direct footprint and come up with the net impact of digitalization in a given scenarios? Precision farming, smart mobility, smart building, energy distribution, energy integration of micro producers, peer-to-peer energy exchanges. How do I use that in a way that I stay net positive? And for that, we have, as a commission, initiated with 36 major ICT companies, the so-called European Green Digital Coalition. It is a venture that started in 2021, but actually has really started working last year. And we, as a commission, have put money to support this coalition of committed ICT players with a project that is led by JESI. That it has Digital Europe in it. It has ETNO, the telecoms, and GSMA. But the heart and soul of it is Carbon Trust, helping us to analyze case by case, real life data. How do we actually perform using digital solution in reality? So we take real life data from precision farming, real life data of a smart building, and make the calculations. What is the embedded? What is the negative impact of digital? What is the positive impact of digital? What is the net impact? And while we're doing it, we actually harnessing some kind of knowledge of what kind of guidelines to give energy sector, transport sector, smart cities, agriculture, manufacturing, what kind of guidelines to give them to maximize the potential, to maximize the benefits and the net impact of it. So many thanks to Tom, to your team. Special thanks to Veronica, of course, and her team, and Anna, for helping us doing that. This is one of the most important things we're doing. And we are now in the phase where we would like to and welcome the vertical sectors to show them how digitalization can be done to avoid traps of rebound effects, to use the minimal number of devices, so you minimize also the direct footprint, and maximize the benefit. So this is kind of a call for interest of the vertical sectors. As I said, the major kind of focus we have is on energy sector, transport sector, construction, agriculture, smart cities, and manufacturing. Those are kind of the major sectors we're working on. But of course, there's the retail sector that is very interested, and we're talking to them. And I just had a meetings with Decathlon and IKEA and Zalando and those and others. Okay. Now, one message to, you all know that your biggest problem is the scope 3 emissions. And for scope 3 emissions, maybe just the carbon glass and carbon kind of focus on emissions may not be enough, because sustainability, even if, say, tomorrow everybody's on renewables, just focusing on gas and oil and electrifying everything may not be enough. We need to look at natural resources as a whole. And I'm sure that there are other speakers, like I said, Geraldine, but also Simon and others in the second panel will talk about what does it mean to be on a material efficiency level. What does it mean to reduce use of natural resources? And we're talking water, we're talking wood, metals, land, sand, you name it. It's not only about oil and this. So the Holy Grail that we're looking at as in the Commission under the umbrella of circular economy is to decouple our economy, because today GDP means more resource use. How do we decouple what we call sustainable prosperity from the use of natural resource? Well, circular economy is the one. But if you look at the details of circular economy, it's all about information sharing. It's all about knowing what the supply chain is doing, knowing where the material comes from, knowing what is the footprint of my little, subcomponents of my product, and knowing what the users will do it, knowing how to repair, to refurbish, to reuse, and knowing what the recycler will do with it to give me back the material so I can start feeding more of a recycled material in my products. So it's all about loops and information, capturing, gathering, processing, sharing. So it's all about ICT, and that's where we come as a Commission, and we have put up, as you know, in March last year, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, and the new kid on the block within that is the so-called Digital Product Passport. This is what we're really after. And the Digital Product Passport and the digital twin transition is not only something that has to be looked at by Ministry of Competitiveness Industry. It's everybody's job to really get it right. Ministry of Environment is very interested in climate, telecoms, industry. So coming back to green and digital, at the moment, the problem is that it falls between two chairs. When I go to ministries and they say green digital transition, they say, oh, that's for environment. When I go to environment people, they say, no, it's for the telecom people. We don't understand that. So at the moment, and maybe Mia can enlighten us because she was in the Prime Minister office before, this is a Prime Minister issue. To really get the green digital right, it cannot be left in the mercy of one of the departments because they always kind of don't understand the other and the capacity is not there. It has to be pushed higher up. So Digital Product Passport is the kind of information system that will give us information across the supply chains and across the usage of the product that we ultimately want to change the business models from quantity-driven business models to more material and natural resource efficient business models, which is basically, think about it simply as everything as a service. Move to dematerialization and move to virtualizations. There are many things the digital has managed to virtualize. Talking about music, for example, just think of how many things we don't use anymore material products. It's all kind of virtual. So there are many ways we can still have a profitable business and be using less natural resource, because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation is to have sustainable products in Europe that are cheaper. That is the ultimate goal. Of course, there are many obstacles because today sustainability means extra cost. I need this data. I need to make sure that supply chain gives me that data. How do I manage that? So it's a lot of confusion, but the ultimate goal, and hopefully the right legislation in place, will get us there. So in concluding, we need digital for getting acceleration on the net zero pathway, but just emissions is maybe not enough. We need really to look at the overall picture of sustainability, and digitalization is the way to go if you really want to go from quantity-driven business model to service, product as a service. So thank you very much. You can take out the slides. I don't know if I can do that myself. And I'm ready for questions. I'm afraid I'm already...
Thank you very much, Ilias. Thank you. And yeah, really interesting, the priorities in the three areas that you discussed. I know that we've had some questions, so if we can put the questions on the screen, please. I'm going to ask the top one because it's been upvoted. So the audience would like to know, what are some of the key things non-ICT companies can do to understand how digital can help them have a net positive effect on society?
Right. There are, well, basically, the first I would say is come and see if you can benefit from participating as a supporting partner, or even just to have a look what the Green Digital Coalition is doing, because we are developing the answer to this question. We would like to publish guidance per sector. Are you agriculture sector? Are you construction, energy, manufacturing sector? We are developing guidelines how to use ICT. In summary, if I had to just say 3 bullets would be, when you think of digital, don't think to buying equipment. The same thing I just said about service. Think of digitalizations to be a service to you. So go to your Gaia X representative, or go to the clouds companies that you're using and ask for a service. Because when you ask for gadgets, it's already a wrong start. First, ask for the minimum number of whatever infrastructures you need, ask mostly as a service, and then try to see what exactly, well, we're trying to do it, what are exactly the points where you get the biggest bucks for your effort in terms of reducing emissions or reducing materials, and avoid rebound effects. Because rebound effects, how could I say, applying digital without any governance and any thinking will most probably do more damage than good. I mean, don't quote me on that. I'm just shooting myself in the foot. But if you just say digitalize without any governance, without any proper use, with the frugality, with the very specific skills and goals, will get you in trouble more than in good thing. And that is where we as a coalition try to develop these guidelines. So I think in summary, come, and our heart and soul is Carbon Trust. Contact Carbon Trust, contact me, see what the coalition is doing for you on this.
Just finally, we're almost out of time, but I'm fascinated by your experience. Where have you seen the greatest impact? I mean, you talked about leakages in the distribution network for electricity, but also water. Can you give us one example where you've seen a huge impact from digitalization?
Right. I think energy sector is one. Just leakages. I mean, there are companies that are members that like Schneider Electric or Atos and others, which can give you numbers on buildings. The proven cases are energy efficiency of buildings. I mean, just doing the simplest thing with digital, you have 10 to 20% energy efficiency of a building without nothing using materials, just smartness. I mean, buildings is 40% of our carbon emissions in the world, in Europe especially. So smartness of a building is immediate, it's done, it's easy, it's proven by our coalition, methodology. Another one, as I said, is integration of micro producers in electricity, managing the, let's say, the capacity, the flexibility, and the demand supply of electricity grids. And especially because many of us are micro producers, peer-to-peer exchanges. Another one is manufacturing. That's already happening. So in manufacturing, people are using IT all the time, and it's efficiency goals. It's a lot of kind of, if you think about digital is a tool to support sustainability, but traditionally it supports one dimension of the sustainability, the economic efficiency gains. It struggles with social and environmental gains. Okay, so now we're pushing a lot for environmental, but at the end of the day, remember, you need to ensure that it's also fair and socially acceptable what we're about to do with digitalization. So manufacturing is more the traditional, and there is smart cities is maybe the most talked about. Smart cities solutions, which is kind of integration of a traffic, of energy efficiency of buildings, of the waste streams. And if you go down all the way down to food waste and distribution of secondary use of clothes and food and things like that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for a fascinating presentation. I'm interested to see how this develops, of course, I think like everybody else in the audience. But Ilias, that's all we have time for right now. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well,
we look forward to hearing more in the future.
Thank you.